I'm joined by James Creedon.
Evening, Tom.
Good evening, James. Let's begin, shall we, with some online reaction to the shooting incident in Ottawa yesterday.
That's right. Crudely breaking it down into two camps, Tom, even though there's every grade in between. First of all, those who really think Canada has irrevocably changed since the events of yesterday. Take a look at this article in Esquire magazine. Canada, the idea is in pieces. The Canada I believe to be safe, so secure, is gone. All of that was the Canada of my youth. This is Canada now, writes Stephen March. Another expression that comes back frequently is an end of innocence in Canada, I suppose in particular by contrast to the United States, which has been more the target of terrorist attacks than its northern neighbour. And again, you're seeing that expression coming back on social media. Canada has just lost her innocence. Andy Carvin on Twitter sounding a note of caution, though, and this brings us to the, I suppose you could say, the opposite attitude. Don't let the seat of government become a fortress. I suppose we'll remember after the 9/11 attacks in the US, which of course were much, much worse than what happened in Ottawa yesterday. Quickly, the Patriot Act came into force and there were restrictions on freedoms in the name of greater security for the population. That is something that the Globe and Mail in their editorial is warning against. We kind of like Canada the way it is, says the Toronto-based paper. There will be questions about whether our laws need to change, but we suspect that you too like Canada as it is. And they contrast the Parliament buildings in Ottawa, where the front lawn is quite a free space. People can come and play frisbee, they can practice yoga. Obviously you need screenings to get into the building, but they don't want to see a lockdown like perhaps you've had in the US. They also go on to say that essentially, in light of this week, Canada may have to change, but whatever changes we choose to make should be done carefully and calmly, and the nature of the trade-offs between freedom and safety need to be kept in mind. Not a panicky reaction, because a few small number of men do not pose a threat to the survival of Canada. So very much a measured response in the Globe and Mail, Tom.
Okay, let's move on to something completely different. We're 25 years now since the fall of the Berlin Wall, and you've found a photograph, an iconic one, in fact. And the subject matter of that picture there in Berlin 25 years ago is actually French.
That's right. Take a look at this magazine, Bunte, German magazine, from back in November 1989 when all of this happened. You can see a guy there in the centre of the front cover with a pickaxe, and he was photographed also in colour on Time magazine and several other publications around the world. He was taken, Tom, as a symbol in many senses of East Berlin, or East, you know, the East, I suppose, scaling the wall towards freedom. In fact, he was a French guy, and he's just been tracked down by Rue 89. His name is Laurent. He had been living in West Berlin for about 5 years. At the time, it attracted hippies, lefties, etc. And there he is today. He was a punk in 1989, Tom, and he is still a punk. And he's not too impressed with the changes in Berlin between 1989 and today. It's less a haven, I suppose, for punks, pacifists, lefties, artists, etc. I suppose that the price of living has gone up somewhat, and it's less the Berlin of yore. But he talks about how he was one of the first to scale the wall with a pickaxe, and he started chipping away at it, and he still has what became some of the first fragments of the Berlin Wall to come down. But it is quite amusing that he was taken to be the face of East Berlin, and he was Laurent from Tours, who had been just hanging out in West Berlin for the previous 5 years.
Goodness, well, that is a surprise. 25 years later, we're finding out that key piece of information. Let's go to something even lighter, in fact, because the actress Renee Zellweger, I hope I pronounced her name correctly, a lot of people wondering whether perhaps she's had some work
surgery.
done.
Been to see her surgeon. And let's take a look at Gawker.com, because the way they did it is she appeared at an event this week for the first time in quite a while, and so they just said, here's a photo of Renee Zellweger's face, here's another photo of her face, here's another photo of her face. And what they did in this sort of, I think, slightly unfriendly, unpleasant way was contrast her appearance now with how she looked at the time of Bridget Jones' Diary. If I can eventually come down to it, there you go. And indeed, she does look very different, but it sparked a huge amount of press coverage this past week, with some people coming to her defence saying, leave her face alone. There is a very real reason why the actress would want a whole new face. We were all incredibly mean to her old one. Others saying it's time to leave women's faces alone, period. This article in The Guardian says, it's not unreasonable to ask where the real Renee Zellweger has gone. The changes seem so shocking, as she's best known for playing a character who looks nothing like her. So there was a whole spectrum of remarks. Nothing's wrong with her face, says another response in The Guardian by Jennifer Gerson Ufalacy. She says there's something wrong with us because the continued evolution of our obsession with famous people has birthed a strange phenomenon. The bodies of total strangers are considered collective public property to be casually evaluated, critiqued and discarded. So, wow, it just provoked a massive amount of debate about that. And I suppose the whole thing is Renee Zellweger must have been aware of that herself. But apparently she is glad that folks think I look different. And she's putting it down to a healthy lifestyle, going to the gym, eating well, and just generally looking after herself, Tom, which, I mean, it may well explain a certain amount of the fact that she does look different. But I like Andy Borowitz's sum up. If you don't care whether Renee Zellweger had plastic surgery, you must have a life. So I suppose the fact that I've spent 2 or 3 minutes talking about it means I don't have a life.
Well, I didn't actually know anything about that until just now.
All right, well, you have a life.
I'm very pleased to say. But either way, just looking at those pictures there behind us on the screen, I think she looks terrific.
I think she looks
whatever
really well.
whatever
That's
the
right.
case,
That's
and
right.
it's her business, her face. She can do what she likes.
There you go. I agree.
There we are. That's my verdict.
Write an article.
Thank you, James.
Contribute to the noise.
I will. Thank you, James Screeden. That was this evening's edition of Media Watch. It's time now for Focus on France 24. Today we're turning our eye to Tunisia, where historic elections are set to be held.